Hello friends, Heidi here from Rain Country. God is good all the time. And I'm here today to address the topic in reference to those who say they can't afford to prepare. And I get it. I understand. There was a time I felt the same way. And part of the problem is that when people are first starting to follow those who've been doing this for a while, they look and they see all the stuff that they have, or they watch shows like Doomsday Preppers where people are buying thousands and thousands of dollars of freeze-dried foods and stocking them away and putting in underground bunkers and maybe buying some fancy prepping related gadgets. And really what people need to do is get away from that particular mindset. It's not that those things are bad if you can afford to do it and you just have all this money all of a sudden and you can just go invest in all this stuff. But most people don't do it that way. Most people start small and build up. So stop calling these items prepping items, but think of the everyday things that you can do. So starting, for example, with you do still have to go to the store at some point and buy some groceries. Well, and some people do this on a daily basis. Now, those of us who already have been doing this for a long time, we don't have to go to the store every day because we just keep our pantries full. So that might be something we only do once a week or even once a month as far as just to get the everyday basic necessities. So when you make that trip to the store, are you already buying a bag of rice? Maybe you usually get 5 pounds or 2 pounds at a time. Either buy 2 of those same size bags or buy 1 bigger bag if you can get a better deal at that price, and then repackage it so that you have some ready to use and some put up. Now, I'll go ahead and link to a video down below on storing grains. Everybody's going to have their own way of doing it. Some like to store in half-gallon jars and vacuum seal them. And even though I do a lot of vacuum sealing, that's not the way I typically store my grains for long term. And I know that thinking that way, your first thought is, well, that will take me forever to build up to have a year or even a few months worth of food put up. And by the way, this can apply to anything else, even produce. If you have a way to dehydrate your food or can your food or even freeze, buy extra produce. Instead of buying 1 or 2 pounds, buy 4 or 5, buy 10 pounds, and then put the excess up in some form, be it canning, freezing, dehydrating. I would say freeze drying, but people who say they can't afford to prepare certainly can't afford to shell out the big bucks for a freeze dryer, which I personally, though some people love it, it is really totally unnecessary when it comes to putting up food, because there's much older methods of putting up food that don't have to cost a lot. And I did cover this, by the way, in a video I'll link to down below on getting started in food preservation. And I rank it from most inexpensive, practically free way of putting up food and to the most expensive, which is the freeze drying, on the far end. Make sure you click on either more or show more right down here below the video screen, depending on what device you're on, to open the description box and find any of the video links and other information I'll be putting down in there. So that's one aspect. And again, you can do this with things like even canned goods, though I don't recommend stocking up for long-term storage on canned foods that are fruits or tomatoes, because those are not going to last as long in food storage as those that you can yourself in glass jars, or even the ones that you buy that are non-acidic, such as green beans, carrots, whatever kind of vegetable you prefer to buy in canned form, or even meats, which, by the way, canning meat is one of the easiest things to do. So to sum that up, instead of thinking it as prepping items, which kind of gets us in the wrong mindset, think of it as insurance. So you're putting this stuff up as an insurance policy that you cannot be denied. So you're putting up this extra food, so it will be there for you in case anything happens. And again, we have to also stop thinking of it as some major world event, but some kind of crisis that can affect only you and your household, such as a job loss, some kind of accident that prevents someone from working, a a death in the family and or some other kind of catastrophe like a car breaking down or a refrigerator stops working and you have to buy a new one, and it's like, where's this money going to come from? Well, if you have food storage to fall back on, then you can fall back on that, and you don't have to worry about buying groceries for a month while you put that money into buying a new refrigerator or whatever it is. Then the other thing I wanted to say is that if you've ever learned a little bit about how people get out of debt, and we have a video we did on this several years ago, or if you've ever listened to Dave Ramsey, which I don't agree with everything he says, but one of the things that I found to be true, and we were already in that when we watched some of his stuff, is that there's this snowball effect. So once you start seeing the principal drop on whatever loans that you have out there, it gets you more motivated to find ways to save money, to put more on the principal of whatever that is, and then get it paid off quicker. And it is amazing. Once you start doing it, it's amazing how fast it can happen. Well, the same principle works when you're putting up food in your food storage, and then down the road, maybe buying some bigger ticket items like getting a dehydrator or a canner or whatever it is you need to continue your process. Well, you start seeing this build, what your insurance policy there building up and becoming greater with that little bit of work you're doing. The more you're going to find things to cut so you can put even more into that. I think at least 99% of all people could find something to cut, some little extra expense that they don't need, or a way that they can save money in certain areas, such as buying in bulk. For example, one I like to use is instead of buying one little half-ounce jar of herb or a spice, consider buying a whole pound. And if it's something that you use quite a bit, maybe it's cinnamon or black pepper, you can save a lot of money doing that, like a lot. I was blown away the first time I ever went to Costco and realized the difference. And I could buy this much, a pound of this particular spice, and it cost me as much for this as it did for this little 1 ounce jar at the store. So little things like that can, so those kind of things, start looking at those kind of things. Start hanging up your clothes to dry instead of running the dryer all the time, at least when you're able. And you'll find that can save you a minimum of $50 a month. And that $50 can then go into your food storage or can go into a savings. And I recommend that savings be something that's tangible rather than in a bank, but that's just me. And then when you have enough in that little jar, you can take that and then go buy your dehydrator or go buy whatever it is that you really want to have to help you continue on this journey. And I think a lot of times we're so in the habit of doing things a certain way. We always keep buying the same toothpaste or deodorant, not realizing how easy it is just to make your own and how much money you can save and have it in a more natural form. And, it could even be something as just brushing your teeth with coconut oil or baking soda or both. And it's all going to depend on the person. And then let's definitely not overlook having a garden. I mean, this is one of the least expensive ways to put up food. And again, though, if you're brand new to gardening, get on it right away because it's a learning process for sure. But you can start small and build on it. That's what we did. We started small and eventually built and built and built. What you're seeing behind me is my grapevines. I'm standing on my deck and my grapevines go all the way around my deck, but that's just the deck. So this was, besides the greenhouse, which you probably you can barely see right back here. There's a gap between the deck and the greenhouse. And in there I have blackberries and the grapevines are also growing through the blackberries. And then just on the other side is a greenhouse. That was one of the first things we did was put in a greenhouse just so I could at least grow tomatoes. That was important to me because we use tomatoes for making all kinds of things. And the tomatoes we get locally, it's rare to ever get tomatoes actually have any flavor to them when we buy them at the store. So many years ago, that was one of the first things. Then we expanded to this section between the greenhouse and the deck, which at that time was very, very different. It's not what it is now. And around that same time started getting pots and growing things around the deck right here on the deck, and eventually expanded to the front deck. and then got rid of the swimming pool and the trampoline that the kids used to use. And then we're able to expand our garden out there. Other than the chicken coop and the chicken yard, pretty much the whole backyard is a garden now. And then a good chunk of our front yard is a garden, and a good chunk of our little narrow side yard is a garden as well. So we just keep expanding and finding ways to make it work in our little shy 1/3 acre lot in a neighborhood. We do have 2 other pieces of property we have bought since we've even started this channel, but still pretty much all of our gardening happens right here. The only thing that really goes on at our piece right down the road is the blackberries we've allowed to, they grow wild out there, and we've allowed them to start filling in just certain areas so that we have those to go pick. It's the same thing. You got to build on it a little bit at a time, and you also have to learn. But once you start getting things established, especially if you can really work on putting in some perennials can take, especially when you're talking fruits, can take much longer to really start giving you fruit. But once it's established, it's going to always come back. Most years it's going to give you fruit, but you also have to realize you're also going to have those weird years where you have a very late freeze, like happened to us last year in 2022. Got absolutely no fruit on any of our trees. The grapes did fine, simply because the flowers come on those so much later than the apples, cherries, and plums. But so we were good there. And same thing with the blackberries. Most of the berries weren't an issue, but that's another reason why you can't even depend on your garden alone. You have to put up, when you've got tons of apples coming in on your trees, or peaches or pears or whatever it is, don't put up just what you can use in a year. Put up enough that you can have plenty to get you through 2 or 3 years, so that if something like that happens, well, you can fall back on that, whether they be canned, dehydrated, or frozen. So those were the 3 main points I wanted to cover. The first one being, so let me rehash, the first one being, stop calling these things prepping items and start looking at them as insurance. And then the second one being to look at what you can cut, even if it only saves you a few cents here and there, that can be enough to really start helping you to build on what you have as you take that money that you saved here and put it over here. And then the last one being, don't forget about trying to grow your own food, because this is going to be a renewable resource right there. And then, of course, especially on something like this, I really would like my followers to share what they have done. I know there's a lot out there that have had some great stories they've already shared with us, how they got started on a very, very limited budget to get them to where they are now. How did you make it work? Because these stories from real people, and all the different stories, because everybody's going to have their own path that they took to get them where they are. These are important, and each person's story will help somebody specific. And maybe this person's story will help that person, while this person's story over here will help this person. So these stories are all important. We should all be sharing this information. And that's why I really like opening the floor in the comments, so everybody can learn from more than just me, because we took our own path, and what we did worked for us. Maybe the way we did some things aren't going to work as well for other people, depending on their situation. All right, well, I hope you enjoyed this video, and don't forget to check out the links I'll be putting in the description box down below. And thanks for watching. Take care, and God bless.